In the last episode, we went over the main secrets in the DLC, and as I'm sure you noticed, it's so easy to think you've found everything, but there's always more secrets tucked away. For example, until very recently, I did not know Midir had a grab attack. When I first beat Midir, it was with a Silver Knight Lido cosplay, and in the 5 hours it took to deplete Midir's gigantic health pool, I remember continuously thinking, man, Lido could have looked so much better. Because a few days before release, hundreds of assets were data mined from the Ringed City patch, and amongst these were the UI icons for a certain armor set. Look closely at it. So it's a well-worn Silver Knight set, and it has a few extra modifications to set it apart from the other standard sets of the Legion. Just look at those horns. It would have been so perfect for Lido, because he's described as an eccentric Silver Knight, a man wearing well-worn armor from his distant travels around the outskirts of the world. Another thing that didn't make it in are a few more lines of dialogue from the Locust Preacher. This creature gives exposition on many characters of Dark Souls 3, and if my source is correct, he was supposed to also say, "Of all the fingers, he alone was embraced by the abyss, for he was human and never a grub. Fear not the dark, my friend, and let the feast begin." So he's describing a finger of Rosaria, but which one? For a little bit of background, Fingers of Rosaria are red phantoms who invade, kill, and pillage for their own benefit and to gather tongues for their mistress. In return, they can be reborn, though those who are reborn one too many times run the risk of turning into grubs, something that does happen to Yellowfinger Hazel, in fact. Of all the fingers, he alone was embraced by the abyss, for he was human and never a grub. So place your bets. Who do you think this is describing? There are only really 3 options, for there are only 3 male Fingers of Rosaria: Creighton the Wanderer, Ringfinger Leonard, and Middlefinger Kirk. Personally, I think it's Leonard mentioned in this dialogue. He was the one who eventually stole Rosaria's soul in some misguided effort to keep it safe. I believe he's the finger in question, because the dialogue says he was human and never a grub, and Leonard is described multiple times as rejecting rebirth and the restoration of his scarred flesh. Therefore, unlike the other fingers, he would never risk turning into a grub and losing his humanity. Of course, for whatever reason, this dialogue was removed, which makes it unwise to draw conclusions, but it is interesting nonetheless. For what does it mean to be embraced by the abyss? That's something we'll go into in our Locust video, I promise, so keep an eye out for that. Speaking of locusts, have you ever tried to listen to the locusts below the swamp? They say a variation of
"Search thine own self,
and
fear not the dark, let the feast begin."
While I was straining my ears listening for this fairly pointless dialogue so I could fill out my 20 questions, I noticed that the abdomen of the locusts is remarkably similar to that of the angels. Look at the iridescent wings and the stinger in particular. Are these reused assets, or is there some parallel to be drawn between the two creatures? Or am I trying really hard to make this a valid point to include in the video? Who knows? Just above the locusts is Lap, in what can potentially be the last place you meet him.
Please, someone tell me, who am I? Why am I here?
Keep revisiting him here, and after reloading the game 3 times, we get solid proof that Lap was not lying about forgetting his name, and he was not lying about going hollow. If you make him hostile here, you can unlock a more satisfying ending to Lap's story. The Lap arc of Patch's questline is really well executed, and you have to love the clues they give you, from the signature squat, the slightly tuned voice, and especially the part where he risks his life to find you treasure if you fail to pick it up. But did you know that it was always possible to guess who Lap was simply from his name? A Lap is a word in Middle High German that is used to describe a simple-minded person Or it's ironically used to call a smart person a fool, and obviously this suits Lap to an insane degree, because he's both lost his mind, and it's ironic that of all the intelligent people to lose their minds, it would be our best friend, Patches. Furthermore, in Middle High German, the name Lap also refers to a mender of clothes or shoes, and was used to describe a cloth, a rag, or a patch. Lap also means patch in Swedish. Anyway, after you've talked to Lap about the Ringed City, you can track this information back to its source.
Why, where did you hear that name, love? Oh, it doesn't matter. I'll tell you what I know. The Ringed City is said to be at World's End. Past this heap of rubbish as far as one can go. But you'd better think twice. The forsaken Ringed City was walled off by the gods to contain the pygmies. And the dark soul is better left well alone.
Number 8. Have you noticed what I'm zooming towards? These parts of the Dreg Heap are on an endless trip downwards, and you have to wonder, are they meant to provide the illusion from a distance that the Dreg Heap is collapsing downwards and inwards, or was this just an asset that they forgot to lock in place? And some Dreg Heap assets should feature more prominently, in my opinion. For example, if you look left, at the very edge of the drop down to the Demon Prince, you can see the entire undead settlement cobbled together here. And further down, in the Demon Prince arena, there's the rubble of the first Firelink shrine. You can even find the well and the stone-staired circle at the center. And of course, don't forget this part of the Grand Archives. This rooftop you can jump to in early Lothric. This room where you first encounter Lothric knights. The courtyard in Lothric with 2 enormous snakes. Wait, what? I had this tweeted at me by @BestSiegmeier on Twitter, who discovered these giant, ash-coated snakes that bleed. He posits that they might be primordial serpents, but if they are, they certainly lack the familiar features, the signature nose, the teeth, the mustache thing. No, whatever these are, I'm not sure they're from any age we know of. Note, however, that they are impaled with the weapons of the Lothric Knights, as if a battle took place here. Number 11. With every major drop in the Dreg Heap, there's the ghost of Gale to guide you, but did you notice also, he's ripped off a part of his red cloak and weighed it down with a stone. These additional markers show you where to go. I bet he regrets it now. That cloak probably could have done with the extra range in the boss fight. The most significant piece of red cloth is located in the shared grave of the Ringed City, signifying the drop downwards that's necessary to progress you upwards. Speaking of, does Patches really screw you over with his final kick, or is this him trying to help you? And while we're on the topic of red cloth... Yeah, I know, it's not really in the Ringed City, but it was added with the Ringed City patch. Ornstein's plume, thanks to a small change.org petition, was added, and it might have been a simpler task because there was an addition of the Dragonslayer armor, which also had a similar plume and similar cloth physics. Another thing added with the patch was these humanity sprite icons, which signifies which bonfire location is the most active, so whether it's for PvP or for co-op, use these to your advantage. Number 14. One area you can't access, despite it being plastered everywhere as promotional material, is this lonely tower just past the first Judicator Giant. And if you get the Judicator Giant to throw you over there, you discover that there's nothing inside. Interestingly enough though, there are these statues that you found around Irithyll, though who they're of has always been a bit of a mystery, and given that they're meant to be out of eyeshot, I doubt this is much more than a reused asset and never meant to be seen up close. And my god, were some things not meant to be seen up close. In the world brought to ruin by the breaking of the shell are 2 crumbled kingdoms off in the distance. One is Lothric, 100%. There's even a 3D model you can get close to and look at properly. But further, in a blurry 2D asset, At the edge of the end of the world is this structure. It has elements of Anor Londo, it has elements of that old Drangleic footage we saw, but whichever it is, I think that they're trying to convey that this place at the end of the world contains the ruins of the most significant kingdoms, and Lothric being featured so prominently here leads me to believe that our unkindled adventure was potentially the most significant of all. As an aside, this place at the end is what you saw in the opening cutscene, with a pilgrim come to die outside the ruins of Lothric.
The fire fades, and the lords go without thrones.
And of course, the Lords of Cinder weren't the only ones to abandon their thrones. So too would the Pygmy Lords, one of whom crawls towards Filianor. This dude is dedicated. Look at his skull, it's disconnected entirely from his spine. I decided to devote about 67 gigabytes of file space to record this guy's journey, all for this incredible payoff.
Filianor, help me.
I'm sure a bunch of you guys did this too. It's the end of the game, you have to drag it out somehow. Number 17. The big question is, what exactly does Filianor's egg represent, and how exactly does it obscure the Pygmy Lords and the Dark Soul and this end-of-the-world scene? And it's fairly well established that wherever this is, it's in the future. For example, Gale's weaponry is incredibly worn, the Pygmy Lords have heard rumours of a Red Hood coming to devour them, and of course, the entire world has fallen to ash. And I'm still working on my theories, but right now I believe, maybe, that time passed naturally for everyone else except us, with their world slowly grinding down to ash. But for us, it seems like we were fast-forwarded to more or less the exact moment Filianor would eventually die. For a pygmy is crawling to her, somehow, still expecting her to be alive. I'm getting off topic, sorry. I'm just really keen to make the main story video for this place. But what I wanted to bring up for this point was that there's this obscure animated film by Tokuma Shoten called Angel's Egg, and without a doubt, Miyazaki was inspired by this film when creating Filianor's design, and I hope to watch it and discover the meaning of the egg through this film. We're actually going to have a movie night where we stream and watch the movie together over on my Discord, so check out the description for that. Another theory I've seen about the egg has been thrown around ever since Filianor's design was shown, and it talks about the resemblance between Filianor's egg and the Vagrants of Dark Souls 1. And I have to agree there is a resemblance. Look at them, they're cracked in much the same way, with a coarse, dark interior. And remember, these creatures were only present in Dark Souls 1, which was during the close of the Age of the Gods, so even from a timeline point of view, it makes sense that Filianor, who was likely placed here in the Age of the Gods, may have possessed one of the last Vagrants. These mysterious creatures used to appear in other people's worlds if you dropped items or if you lost a large amount of humanity in your own world. And very, very interestingly, the cracked Vagrants simply drop humanity and twin humanity, suggesting that the humanity fragments of the Dark Soul might have made up that dark interior. And for an egg with a black inside that obscures the Dark Soul of humanity from those who would claim it, this feels very significant. Speaking of time passing, after you've used the Envoy banner to arrive in the Ringed City, time passes in Ariandel, and the fire that you lit to eventually engulf Ariandel takes root in the chapel. But that's not the only visual change in the outside world, because as noticed by Zawon Zen on Reddit, there are now more trees in Farron Keep. Did they really need more trees here? I didn't realize. I mean, it looks a bit nicer, but why? This baffles me. If they decided to devote development time to this, then what else in the outside world has changed? Well, one thing has. The epilogue of Dark Souls 3, the song played in the credits after you beat the Soul of Cinder, has changed. It's become a little bit more powerful, with a few more instrumentals. I'm going to just let this play for a little while so we can let the end of Souls sink in a little bit. I'll see you next time in our story explanation of the Ringed City. Also, thank you to the ton of new patrons we got in the last video. This video would have gone out earlier for you guys, but as you can probably tell, I got really, really sick and I didn't even think I could narrate, and hopefully my voice doesn't sound terrible. It probably does. I'm gonna go listen back to it now. I'll see you in the next one. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.